And we are live streaming from Animore 2016. Hello, everyone.
Cheers. Oh, shall we do the official start?
Yes, there we go.
The clackers. It is time to start.
Yes, and you're now deaf. Hopefully not.
What?
Those are the Hyoshigi wooden clappers from Japan. And we're here at in a hotel room, obviously at Animore. Oh, sorry. That
looks like our loop backs are coming back.
There we
We're
go.
doing a proof of concept mobile event. So thanks for joining us live on site.
Totally. So we're at Animore 2016 in Baltimore. It's their first year doing this con, although we were saying that the folks who organized the event have organized other cons in the area, so it's not their first time. So what are your impressions so far for the first day of the con?
Well, this con is rather interesting. Right now, the Washington, Baltimore, D.C. area is being hit by a huge snowstorm, and this snowstorm is going to dump 2+ feet of snow into the DC area. They've declared a state of emergency, and the metro systems, the trains, have all shut down. Well, they will all be shut down as of 11 o'clock tonight, and will not open until they resolve the snow issue. Baltimore isn't going to be hit quite as badly. Bad enough. Last I heard was a foot, though, so that's enough to slow them down, and I think it's also probably slowed down some of the con goers.
Yeah.
As it's been easy to get in and move around, and a lot of people thought, well, maybe they might not get stuck. Yeah. And sadly, that means that attendance has been on the slimmer side for an inaugural con. Yeah, this is the first time they're doing Animore. And but fortunately, it's part of a group of cons done by Black Materia. And so it's not their first time doing a con, it's just their first time doing it here. So you have people who are seasoned, but with the snowstorm, it's made for some rocky starts.
Yeah.
But we're having fun nonetheless.
Absolutely. What's been great is seeing how much the folks who are here are really enjoying themselves. They're really making the best of it, and it's been really fun seeing folks attend panels and see a very relaxed set of guests, actually. They seem some of the most laid-back group of guests I've ever seen. Like, we're here, we got our pizza, we're fine. Vic Mignogna poked his head in on an opening ceremony, just, hi, everyone, and just walked out, you know.
Yeah, it was pretty flexible.
I exist. It's pretty fun. There have been some other issues at the con. They had fewer projectors than they anticipated. There are apparently some issues with that. So the video room, unfortunately, was not able to go ahead as planned. And then they've been having to sort of shuffle that around with some of the other panels.
Now, I'm curious, how is it the video panel didn't occur? Or the video room didn't occur?
Apparently, according to opening ceremonies announcement, one of the projectors disappeared during setup. So,
well, that was before all the congoers came, but that's kind of sad because congoers are pretty honest folks for the most part. And you know, you find something and somebody's lost, you turn it into the lost and found, but you don't walk off with projectors. And so I'm glad it wasn't some of the con folks who had that. But that's too bad for everybody at the convention.
It's an inside job.
Ah.
So that's sad. But the good news is that the staff have been doing a great job of managing projectors for different panels and making sure everyone has a projector when they need one. So they've really responded well to the crisis, if you will. Dealer's room has been fun to look at too.
Oh, we found some interesting things in the dealer's room, and hopefully we'll have some interviews with folks in the dealer's room. I picked up some things and spent more money than I probably should have already, and it's not even late Friday night yet, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, our wallets are hurting already. It's sad. That's the life of an otaku, I suppose.
Yes. So, if you see it, get it, because you never know if it's going to be there again.
In fact, we might show you, I got a mystery box
Mystery boxes are fun.
Actually, I should say they have a thing actually called a mystery box, which I didn't get.
Grab bag.
It's like a grab bag. There we go. So I'll show you guys later on what I got in the grab bag. Just random anime and manga stuff. It's fun. But yes, you're right, Fisher. The advantage is that we kind of have the whole con to ourselves, and we're going to see how Saturday is because that's when all the snow is supposed to come. So our expectation is that we're not going to see many more people tomorrow. It's going to be just kind of us at the con. I have a few panels to run, so we'll see what the turnout is for that. It should be a fun thing. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about this experience and what it is relative to other cons, and the whole idea of small cons versus large cons. Because certainly coming to one of these cons where you have less than 1,000 people, a couple hundred folks going around, that's kind of an interesting sort of experience. But before we start, Desert asks what the panels I'm doing are on. That's a worthwhile question because all these panels are new. So you might see these at other cons I'm going to and doing panels at in the future. I'm doing 3 panels at the convention. The first is called If You Like That, Watch This. You guys remember some videos I posted on the YouTube channel with some of the initial notes for that on those videos. And basically I go through various famous anime and then recommend other anime that are like them to some extent. So for Cowboy Bebop, I give some recommendations, and Evangelion and Madoka Magica and so forth. And so that's a useful panel. Then I'm going to be doing one on how did I call it in the convention book? I think it was My Kids Into Anime, Now What? This is a parent's guide to anime and helping for kids understand, or helping parents understand.
My best friend's into this anime stuff. What is it?
Making sure you know your kid is not into tentacle porn. It's fine.
No, anime does not mean hentai. Hentai is a subcategory, not the main thing. I'm amazed how many adults have that misconception. You say, I like anime. Oh, shh, don't say that. Well, no. Hold on. This isn't that much of a geek thing. What's your deal with that? Oh, it's dirty. No. You're thinking of something different. There is good stuff out there. Yeah, there's dirty stuff too. That's something different.
Absolutely. Rule 34. So I talk about that, and then I actually recommend in that panel some anime that would fit into school curricula.
Oh.
So anime about Japanese history, anime about space science.
So if you want to do a report, you could actually present it to the class and not worry so much that someone is going to say, teacher.
I don't think that really. Yeah. So it's hopefully the parent can watch it with their kid. I haven't experienced that.
That would be really interesting if kids did a report on anime because it's such a unusual thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, of course, we had book reports, but the idea of watching movies and then in some of our classes that are period placed or something of that nature, I can imagine people doing film classes and covering anime as one of the media formats, and
definitely,
of course, high school, college, graduate school, doctor, and there's doctor anime.
There's plenty of research papers out there about things like Ghost in the Shell, and Evangelion, and things along those lines. So that's okay. There we go. You okay there? Went down the wrong chute.
Swallowed the tea in my lungs. Okay, lesson 1, don't do that.
And so then the third panel is, I'm completely forgetting. What is my third panel?
Oh, let's see.
I feel like that animation. So I have a panel where I am analyzing and explaining anime as an animation medium, contrasting that with Disney-style animation, limited animation, and European-style animation, and going through to explain how anime is a distinctive approach to animation from kind of a technical perspective as opposed to just story or anything else like that. So we'll see how that one goes. That should be fun. That is very awesome, Liquidus, that White Stuff is shipping EVA 3.33. Once I finally got something worked out there.
Yeah.
As well as Azumanga Daioh.
Yes.
Out again.
My favorite.
Definitely. And then Higurashi's coming out. Cool.
Ooh.
That's definitely a one to be prepared for before you go and watch it.
Now, I noticed something really interesting at the dealer's room this year,
Mhm.
and they're packaging something a little bit differently. At first, I thought it was a case for a DVD, but it was unusually large.
Yeah, I mean, it was about the size of like an iPad. It was quite large, and it had several DVDs in there. And what else was in it?
A sketchbook.
Yeah, like an art book or sketches or whatever. Yeah.
Now, if that was a one-off from somebody, I'd say, okay, cool, specialty box. But they had bunches of titles.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're doing some new packaging. It's a specific company, though, that's doing this.
Yeah, and it's the first time I've seen them. But they're about yay big, roughly, you'd say.
And supposedly they do one run, and once they're sold out, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so with a sketchbook, those are a little bit trickier. You can't to get a hold of. So those were pretty interesting to see.
And the prices weren't absurd either.
No, because you're getting DVDs and a book.
It was in the, I think, $70 range, which for a complete series plus art book, that's reasonable.
That's pretty good, and one of a kind. So.
Exactly. So I thought it was an Aniplex thing initially, because they tend to do those more limited edition stuff. But that's not quite their style.
No.
So I'll be curious to see where that comes from.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. So yeah, we're gonna see. We'll ask the vendor tomorrow and see where this comes from.
So now I'm curious, Higurashi. What can you tell me about that? Because I'm not as familiar with that.
Higurashi, When They Cry. So this is a
when they cry. I cry when I breathe my tea.
That'll do it. Swallow. That usually helps.
Don't breathe tea.
So Higurashi is based on a story from basically a fan story, if you will. This guy made a visual novel, I believe, first, and it's a horror story about a bunch of I say kids. I think they're 12-ish. Living, or they look 12. Living on this small island in Japan, and you find out that various things have happened in the history of the island, and I think it's a history that's repeating itself, kind of a thing.
Ooh.
And it turns very violent very quickly. Lots of death. And the cool thing is, the author has done a number of different stories, and they all interleave, and they all kind of interwork with each other. He did a great job of doing that. And then the various Higurashi series are adaptations of those stories. And I believe he actually writes it and draws it himself.
Wow, that's some talent there.
Absolutely. So one of those big examples of one of these fan creations that then kind of expanded out from there.
I always like to see that. People are a fan, and then they say, not only that, but creator.
Exactly.
I can consume it and create it.
Yeah. and what's remarkable about Higurashi is the fact that the violence does not just occur; it occurs kind of out of nowhere. Yes. Suddenly, people start, drawing knives on each other, kind of stuff. Or okay, whoa,
that's creepy.
Unexpected.
If I expected it, I'd prepare. Oh, wow, yeah.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about his experience being in a small con versus being in a large con, and how that affects your con experience. Because it is interesting being at a place where, like, even today, I was recognizing people, passing them in the hallway.
Yeah, I just saw that guy 2 minutes ago.
And you only have to be in one or two things to be able to really recognize people.
That's that same guy who was asking the questions earlier, and now I'm sitting next to him.
And the other interesting thing, though, too, is obviously that's great because you get a little closer to people.
You can get to know people's names and actually remember.
Yeah. It's also kind of nice, too, because you'll find some people who are a little off, and that's fine because now you recognize them. Okay, I can have a conversation with you, whatever, but I kind of know how to deal with that particular, oddity.
Yeah, because everybody's got their own quirks and idioms, I guess.
But then the other side of that coin too is you go into some of these panels, especially like these Q&A interactive panels, and there's 12 people in there.
Yeah, that's where everybody exhausts all the questions they can think of and suddenly goes silent. And there's most people are scared to talk in public anyways, so everybody's sort of looking. Somebody say something.
Right, and on the other side of that coin too, you get those things where one person won't shut up. And
That's don't dominate the rep, Jack.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that can happen to some extent in larger cons, but because there's so many other people there, the mood of the room can turn on somebody.
The more perceptive people close their requests or questions sooner, and the less receptive keep going until there's enough pressure from their friends or people sitting them, or looks like
or the crowd,
or even the hosts start to close off that question and say, "Okay, and over there."
Yeah. So that creates an interesting sort of element to it, where I don't know that there's so much where that's only a drawback. I think of being a small con.
But on the other hand, it's more conversational, like you're on one-on-one, and I feel that I get a more personal interaction with the talent up there, and not the standard sort of prepackaged. Okay, I know I've been at this 10,000 cons, and so okay, I'll give you my prepackaged response. I feel like I get a more of a okay, well, I'm a person. Okay, yeah, we'll really interact. I'm not just giving you the prepackaged responses to get the crowd going.
He talks about being the voice actor jukebox.
The voice actor jukebox,
where someone will say, "Will you do this line from this character?"
Oh, yeah.
Or how to get into voice acting, or whatever. And he's like, "I answered this question, 20 times, and I'll answer it for you too." But there does come a point where it's like, here's question number 3, and here's question number 5. So you got to be careful about that stuff. And exactly, and that is another interesting side of it, is that at a smaller con, I think you do tend to get more idiosyncratic questions. I certainly see less kind of wisdom of the crowd stuff there, and more of people saying, "I've always wanted to ask this,
Now's my chance."
Yeah, do you ski? Or whatever,
What's your favorite cheese? Why would you ask that? I've never been asked that question. Okay, well, it happens to be Yetost or Gouda or.
That's very Gouda. So we'll see. It's an interesting sort of different. The other side of that coin too is just the number of events. So one of the nice things about a smaller con is you only have like here they only have 3 panel rooms. Well, technically 4. But I think 4 is reserved for something. So there's less choice in that sense. You're not going to. There's not as much of a chance that you have 3 interesting things scheduled. Next week.
I can't make it to everything and be everywhere. So there's more of an opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. You get to actually experience and play around with things. What's also really interesting, speaking of that, this year, is how you'll get certain local interests will predominate. So there's a lot of cosplay in this area, and Animore this year is full of cosplay panels. I was amazed how many cosplay panels there were. That's exciting. I'd say it's at least 80% cosplay panels. Which, that's another side of the coin. If you're not into cosplay, that can be a drawback. But they do have other things to keep you active. And that's actually another good convention tip. Go anyway. Go anyway. It's amazing. I go and find stuff that I'm not into, but there's enough of a buzz about it. I'll investigate and say, what's the appeal of this? Oh, wow. This is kind of neat. And you'll find stuff that you never would have expected to be interested in, and that suddenly they can give you some information on. It's really, really cool. So yeah, D. Roberts. I keep looking at that, yeah. Cosplay in snow. Yes. That is the other issue, is that when you've got 2 feet of snow out there, certain outfits don't lend themselves to being in snow. Even if it looks good, you might not want to go outside for too long. Now, a lot is going on indoors, and it's pretty comfy. Sure. And it's away from the doors, so you're not getting those cold drafts. At the same time, snow is a rare occurrence. So if you are in a costume where your character appears in snow and you feel comfortable, this is a great chance to get those snow shots that nobody else is ever going to have an opportunity for. And so it's pretty good for that. Yeah, especially if you have a sort of snow-themed character. Character that is either winter-themed or has sort of cold powers. Now, if I can control ice. Exactly. A Kami got killed. Oh, no, I don't have that control. You're playing Elsa from Frozen. I mean, that's going to make sense. But just, again, be aware of it, that the cold can come on you faster than you expect. The safety there. So
the downside, though, of a new convention, even though they've had previous conventions, are some of the logistical things. For example, security of making sure their projector was secured, and because it's a newer convention, it's smaller. So having redundancy in equipment and staff is a little bit hard. But as a convention grows, you get to the point where several things can fail, but you have enough contingencies built in from previous years' learning experience that you can compensate.
And you have the scale to be able to do things like, where an Anime Expo or an Otakon, they've got lockers, they've got all sorts of stuff to handle all this stuff, where small con just doesn't have the economic resources to do a lot of that.
On the other hand, I really find it enjoyable when I get to know the con staff by name, and they know me, and they look at me, they recognize me, and they can say, okay, we'll get you to, okay, you're doing the panel, okay, we'll get you what you need, and they there's not, okay, who are you? That's that guy doing the panel, okay.
Absolutely, and that is like gold at a lot of conventions, is being able to just go up and, when they know you, and it makes just a lot of things go so much more smooth. Which is that's a really good point. And to that point, one of the nice things when you have a small con like that, things get answered or taken care of more quickly. We've all had that experience at a large con where you're trying to find something or someone, or where something is, you ask somebody, and they say, let me check on that for you, and they take you to somebody else.
And they take you to somebody else. And then they get on their walkie-talkie and call, and maybe by the end of the panel or whatever, when you almost don't need the thing anymore, somebody might show up.
So that's another great thing, is that I'm the guy who does everything, so I just take care of it. And then the other side of that coin too is the whole aspect of coming to a con during its first year. You get to say that you're at that con.
Inaugural,
right?
Everyone since 1823.
You're saying this is the first year of this con. How back this year? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It also helps if you're going with other people.
Yes.
If you're alone at a smaller con,
make some friends. Make some friends.
Exactly, and take advantage of that. Just say, okay, there's stuff here that I'm not familiar with. I'm just going to kind of jump in and just spend my time with panels.
It's a fantastic time to network, because there's other people with similar interests, and chances are they're local.
Yeah, true.
Because the smaller cons are usually in a more localized region, where the bigger cons draw people from farther distances. So the dispersed number of people is higher. But a smaller con, the person may be in your community, and you may bump into them at the local anime store or movie theater.
That's a great point too. That I found out about local anime stores at smaller cons, because at Otakon, I come from Massachusetts, I come from Florida. Here, I'm down the street here. I have this store and I do stuff. In anime clubs, you'll find local anime clubs.
Anime clubs exhibit at and local merchants. Sometimes they're from out of town, and we spent some money today with an out of town guy. But talking with some of the other folks that we also spent money with, they were in town. They were local. Of course, they have some distribution that stretches outside of the region, but you can find local spots that you never knew existed, because sometimes anime stores are in little hole-in-the-wall spots, and you get to know the owners, and it doesn't hurt, because they can let you know some of the latest information. This set has been limited run, so
but I can put a copy on order
I'll
for
hold it as long as I've got your word. You'll pick it up, and
absolutely.
It's
and Fisher in the chat room points out that the large cons can be a bit overwhelming. Uncomfortable.
That's the truth.
Certainly true. And if nothing else, you're around fewer people. It's easier.
Yeah, the larger cons can sometimes be tricky if you want to make it to. You need somebody who can navigate your friends over to, we're all going to this. Where is it? Oh, we're wandering off into the world. No, we got to make it there on time, and somebody to wrangle you and get you through the masses to where the location is. And just that can be a little bit tricky, especially if you have folks like me who, oh, shiny, what's that? Suddenly I'm wandered off. No, keep them here. We're
exactly. It's an interesting issue, is that there's a lot of stuff there where, and very much to that point, you got stuff where, for example, right here, we have 3 or 4 panel rooms, and they're all right next to each other. So you know where all the panel rooms are.
It's straightforward. That makes it very convenient. So sometimes at cons, I find myself hanging out just with panels, but there's so much more. And one thing that I saw was interesting here is there was a group trying to get a Maids Cafe enough momentum so that next year they'll have that Maids Cafe come for the convention. So in some of the larger ones, we just sort of take for granted that that's going to be there every year, but that's not always the case. So it's interesting. People's feedback really influences what comes to a convention. One year at a convention, I gave feedback on a forum and said, the game of Go is a fascinating game. I'd really like to see something like that present. And next year, they had the local chapter of the Go Club come have a panel where people could come and learn Go and play Go and practice and learn about the clubs, and it was fantastic. So feedback is always nice, and especially with a smaller con where they definitely have, everybody appreciates feedback, but the smaller cons even more so, because that's what gets them to where they are. So
I'd encourage folks to go to any feedback session that a con has. It's worth going, sharing your experiences, saying what happened. Even if you didn't have any bad experiences, knowing that things went smoothly.
Both.
And I've been at some of these where somebody said, I didn't know, it wasn't, I didn't have any amazing experiences, didn't have any bad experiences. Everything just flowed smoothly. And people go, thank you. That's how it should be. It doesn't have to be an amazing thing. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. So now I'm going to shift gears here because the chat room has been talking about something that I think is really interesting and that we should address.
Yeah, what is this?
Which is about rescuing licenses and folks rescuing shows. Before I do that, actually, there's something else in the chat I wanted to bring up, and this is a good point. Anime Matsuri, which is the company that runs Anime Expo, if I recall correctly. Let me just make absolutely sure of that before I say the wrong thing. Anime Matsuri. Nope, I am incorrect. This is why I double check my stuff. Houston, Texas. Although I think the same problem is reported in at AX. There have been cases reported of staff at cons acting inappropriately with guests. And this is something that is very important to address and to bring up. If you see somebody acting improperly, I think I'm going to share the story from a recent local con, which I won't name just because I don't want to get anyone into trouble, but where they had a maid cafe. They actually had a host cafe. And one of the hosts got very drunk and started saying some very inappropriate things to some of the guests.
Oh my.
About how, I think one of the lines was, did you girls know that drinking time is sexy time? It's a little creepy. And also just kind of being touchy-feely, things along those lines. It just really crossed.
Alcohol can really change a person's better judgments.
And so they have this thing. So folks went to the feedback panel and told folks that, and they said, thank you, we're going to find out who did this, and they're never coming back to this convention again. And if the host cafe will not tell us who it is, then the host cafe is never coming back to this convention again.
Oh, wow.
Now, obviously, they're going to ask the host cafe, they're going to look into it, they're not going to trust a random person just completely out of nowhere.
Right.
But they're going to assume. I mean, obviously, no one's going to claim that out of for no good reason. So they're going to make a good faith assumption that is a valid complaint, and go forward with that. So, be aware that sometimes staff can act inappropriately, and that needs to be addressed. Yeah. As you were saying, it could be they're having too much to drink. It could be something else happened.
When good otaku go bad.
Be aware of that. One of the things I love about this con is that they put up a big sign about cosplay is not consent. This
was fantastic. Cosplay is not consent.
Exactly.
There are boundaries we all must observe.
And it's a sign right at
Remind yourself.
The main part of the con. It's great. And as part of opening ceremonies, they brought this up and said, we want folks to be aware of this. Just because somebody is wearing a reveal outfit doesn't mean that you can go up and touch them or whatever.
Yeah. With cosplay, sexy outfit does not mean I want sex. It means I'm cosplaying. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a costume.
It seems like everybody has that one friend that just doesn't realize some of the boundaries, and it's really helpful to rein them back in and remind them of such things. So it's kind of nice that they had the reminder there. Hey, cosplay is not consent. So.
So Desert Fox suggested alcohol should be banned, and most cons ban strong drinks. The problem is most cons are at a hotel that has a bar.
And that's hard to close down their bar.
And the hotel makes money off that bar. So they're probably not going to just, whatever. That said, I agree that I'm glad to see more conventions policing that more carefully. It used to be back in the old days that, you weren't supposed to, but nobody really paid much attention to it. And now they're saying, no, if we see it, then we're going to say something about it.
On a personal level, I've always felt that if I'm paying my money for the con, I want to get the most of my con. I can drink any day, but I'm at a con. And if I'm drinking at the con, then I'm not really at the con. I'm sort of fuzzy and tired or not really with it. And so I'm not absorbing the best of the con.
But then let's address the other issue is that a lot of folks drink to feel more comfortable around other people.
That's true. So maybe working on openness and friendliness at a con, and that's where going with friends is, or making friends while you're there is a great thing, because then you can feel more comfortable and relaxed and open up. Where if you go by yourself, if you don't make friends and kind of meet people, it can become almost a paranoid feeling of isolation, and nobody likes that feeling. I mean,
and let's be honest, you don't have to come to a con and be a social butterfly,
and you don't have to continue a relationship for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you can absolutely go to a panel and not interact with everyone else there for that panel. You should do that for every single panel, right? There can be some places where you're like, okay, I'm not really comfortable around this book. That's fine. But, getting better is a good thing.
Oh, this is funny. We need marijuana at cons so everyone can chill. What's funny is there are certain states now where that is legal. Now, DC has legalized, but not for public consumption. Yeah. But I wonder, has something like that occurred at states where, like Colorado, where
good question,
it's legal for consumption? I don't know if there's public laws about that.
I don't know. Well, and you also have the issue that can the venue permit or not permit?
Right. They probably would have to say no, or as long as
I don't know.
That's one of those tricky areas, because again, even with the federal law, there's some discrepancy, because federal law says one thing and state law says anher. So
that's why we live in a republic.
Yeah. Wow.
It's not the federal law can't necessarily follow state law, but yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I'd be remiss to not point out that the problem with marijuana is that you're not necessarily totally present either. So just be aware of that. not saying no, but just it's not necessarily the best solution to that problem.
Use good judgment at all times.
Right. Colorado, it's not legal in public, Gotcha.
Oh, okay. So that would
but even there, I mean, this is
edibles or
Yeah.
people. But at every convention, there's what's permitted and what occurs.
Yeah.
And what occurs is not always seen, so it can't be enforced. And so, with a rave, I'm sure there's going to be people who are enjoying different states, and the important thing is for everybody to be safe. And drink your water, have fun, don't impose on others' liberties.
Yeah, and have a second. Have somebody else there who can help you out.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're having trouble. Okay, we'll take you away from this environment and take care of things.
Yeah. So. Exactly.
But now you were mentioning earlier rescuing titles, licenses.
Yes.
Licenses are an important thing, and when a company owns licenses and goes out of business, what happens? There are no more copies?
Well, this gets down to the contract. So when an anime series gets licensed, an American company writes a contract, signs a contract saying that they will sell this thing, and they have the rights to sell that thing for a certain number of years in America. Now, any number of things can happen after that, right? The company could go out of business before they even produce those discs, or the stream, or what have you. Or they can go out of business before the contract's over. Or nothing could happen. They could just license it once, and they get released, and everybody will released, and then the years go on, and no one can get that anymore because it's not available anymore. So and this gets back to the point that, or the underlying business issue, that a company is going to license something to try to make money off of it, and to make money off of it, they produce this product, and they can't necessarily produce a new copy of that product on demand. This is one of the problems with the industrial license.
You run a batch. Once that batch is done, you got to do a whole new batch, and that requires a whole new contract where you've already done your contract on we'll do this many copies. And
the Japanese the Japanese company doesn't necessarily want to grant a license in perpetuity to a company that might abuse that license, or just might not understand how to use it properly. So this becomes an issue for us as otaku, because a show like Higurashi will come out and it'll get licensed, and then the copies will trickle out, and then it kind of disappears.
How can this be out of run when I just heard about it at this convention and I've never seen a copy? I want to get a copy. What? It's out of print. Out of print.
And so what's
an otaku to do?
What's an otaku to do? A couple of things: eBay, and Amazon used sales as well. But when that becomes unavailable, one of the options that companies are doing now, or more recently, is to what is called rescue licenses, by going back to that company and saying, "I know you licensed this 10 years ago. We'd like to license it ourselves for a reissue." Now, here's the thing. That's a new contract with new terms. Times will have changed by that point, which means they don't necessarily have the rights to the same stuff that the original folks had a license to. The opening and ending theme song, for example.
That could have changed hands.
Right, it could change hands. I mean, those are owned by the record label. You got to negotiate with the record label to make all that work.
Oh, there's so much that goes into getting something licensed.
And
one guy owns the rights to his voice, one owns to another.
And then
we've torn the anime in pieces.
Right. And then you get things like behind the scenes footage where maybe you can get it now, you couldn't then, or vice versa. So the reissue is never going to be the same as the old one, which means you're going to get the show, but it's not going to be exactly what it
different edition
to be. Right, different edition. Literally different edition. So
beyond packaging, beyond extras,
and that's the other side of that too. Is they may not have licenses to that same art. It was on the box set originally. It may just not be part of that.
This isn't a different anime. It's the same. It's just the art on the cover. Darn.
Right. And that's part of the thing is understand a lot of that box art is custom made for certain releases in Japan. There may be specific licenses on that art. It depends. So you get these reissues, which are awesome in that way, but they're different. You got to be aware of that. They're often cheaper, which is good for us. But there are disadvantages to that, depending on your perspective, right? Because if it comes out at $80 in 2010, and then it's $30 in 2015, well, you got it 5 years earlier, but you paid a lot more.
Yeah, well, I always run back into the problem of I like save editions when I'm not completely sure about whether I like this anime or not. But if I dig this anime, I want the specialized box set with the graphics, extras, the T-shirt, the toy, whatever stuffed in the side, the lyrics, the song, the soundtracks, whatever extras I can get in the special metal tin with the plushie or whatever, it's some bells and whistles. But you don't know until you're familiar, and sometimes you can't get familiar until you've seen it, unless somebody recommends and says, you gotta see this. If you like this, watch that. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then you have the other side of that coin where, which I'm saying that a lot tonight for some reason.
I gotta flip this coin here.
There we go. There's this side of it where you're paying more money for something that's more special, right? But then you have to. It's the classic, how do I know if it's good? I have to watch it to know if it's good, but then I've watched it to know if it's good. So you definitely have to run that calculus to decide if it's worth it for you or not.
It seems kind of similar to technology.
Yeah.
If you're on the bleeding edge, you pay a high price, but you get to try it out before anybody else and see and give it the full evaluation, where by the time it's adopted by everybody, the price is brought down, but then some of the specialty and novelty is not there. And it's not the cutting edge anymore, so it's not so it's sort of a curve in the life cycle of it. And so, but the idea that something would never be available unless you could hunt it is scary, because I love to see everything. And
this is the problem with physical media in general, is that until we move as a society to a more one-off sort of thing where you can buy a single copy of a thing and it gets produced at that time, kind of the 3D printing model, and you have to run these batches and you have to make 2,000 at a time. There's kind of no getting around this. I don't see any way of solving this, because you need to do that, and the folks out there buying anime aren't necessarily going to buy all 2,000 copies. You don't know how big your market is.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. And you have to kind of get these runs. Folks have been trying to resolve this. One of the interesting things, though, is we have not seen. We have not seen streaming solve this the way we thought it would. So streaming was supposed to solve this because it's digital; it can always be available.
Yeah.
But then you have the same licensing issue in the sense that, do you want to? How many years do you want to sign your anime series away to one company? Especially these. This is the internet.
That makes it.
How long will that company still exist? And how good will those terms be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now? Who knows? So the companies are not as willing to sign a 7-year deal with one of these companies, which means it goes up on Crunchyroll and then it goes away after some period.
Oh, Crunchyroll, the temporary scratch pad of anime.
We both love Crunchyroll. It's amazing how much stuff is up there.
I've seen so much from, but at the same time, I wonder if somebody can come up with the anime library where people can make their money through their time of having it, but then when it gets into the non-licensed, there's still some form of distribution. They can get compensation, but the availability will still be there, because that's the primary thing for me. And if I'm going to find it, I'd prefer to go with something that the artists get what's due them.
Exactly.
And being able to.
Well, and we still haven't figured out if it's not a broken. So we're playing around with a 45-minute timer just to
that's funny
for us. But we're just sort of throwing it on there to see how well it works. Don't worry about it screaming every time.
It is pie.
That's Raspberry Pi
With a touchscreen.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So
the countdown timer, it's going to explode. True, Hulu. I've seen a lot of things on Hulu as well. Hulu.
And we should mention, if you're looking to see if an anime is available streaming, a great site for that is called because.moe.
Okay.
BECAUSD.moe.
I always learn something new from him. It's incredible.
It lets you search for an anime series, and it'll tell you what services it's streaming on. Netflix, Crunchyroll, Hulu, even Viewster. Very, very helpful site for that. And one of the things we're still trying to figure, as Fisher points out,
what was that again?
Because.moe.
Oh, .moe. Not .com. Not .org. Not .moe. There's a moe. There's a moe extension.
There is.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So it's a very useful site. And Fisher points out in the chat room, you have the hard copy versus the digital copy. I personally believe, and this is just me, that in the future we're going to, for better or worse, move to a rental system.
Now there was an effort, as we saw the progression from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, to use something called Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
And Ultraviolet was a licensing system. You would register your product when you bought it, and then you could play it on multiple devices. You have access to a legitimate stream from the creators, but you weren't bound to the media format that it was required to be on. Yeah, and since you owned the license, you didn't have to worry about what format.
And I think that's where we're going to go, is that we will say, hey, I want to watch Sword Art Online. I'm going to buy a license to watch Sword Art Online. That will give me the ability to pull that up anywhere I want to, watch it, and it will track how much I've watched and where I stop and where I start on other devices. And I can watch the entire show, say, 2 times. So if I get lost, I can scrub back, whatever, and so forth. And I pay $5 for that. And every time anyone wants to watch Sword Art Online, they go and they pay their $5. They have access to that. And they have that access for the next 5 years or whatever. But if they want to rewatch it, they got to pay that again. In other words, you never own a copy, but you are purchasing access rights to it in a way that is reasonably that allows
tangible.
Reasonable use of it.
Yeah.
So we've all seen these ham-fisted ways of doing it, where okay, you buy a license for 24 hours.
Oh, and that's not enough time. Suddenly something happens. Oh, I threw away my money because I wasn't. I had to get my taxes in.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's we'll figure all that out. Yeah. But I personally think that because we're seeing the move towards that, where we see all these folks who watch Naruto on YouTube,
but without having a physical copy, like many of us appreciate in the physical copy, the extras are harder to find, because on the physical copy you can't avoid seeing on the menu structure extras, and in a stream it's harder to hunt those down. You have to make a concerted effort to...
I think those extras will become content that's just made available somewhere. On the original website they'll have that. Folks will make it available.
As D says, on my hard drive.
Yes. I have a lot of hard copies on my hard drive. I totally hear you there. Personally, I think, for better or worse, extras are a thing that exists for DVDs and Blu-rays.
It does make the sales for me,
and
in many cases.
And I think they are not necessarily intrinsically part of the purchase. I think we may see that as a temporary trend as part of digital media. It's going to go away. Just as VHS didn't come with extras, DVDs and Blu-rays did, to try to...
Well, there were a few VHS that had some additional, but not nearly the extent that Blu-ray had. DVD. I mean, I'm sure Blu-ray has extras as well. But yeah, separating it from the hard copy, I think, would be... it would definitely diminish sales of the hard copy.
Sure.
Because a lot of people like that specifically for that, and that's the only reason they don't stream, because they can get all that in one convenient spot. But
and I'm somebody who gets a hard copy of stuff. I like having a physical copy for all sorts of reasons, not the least being that it's a physical copy I can always get to, and if anything else happens, I do kind of have that doomsday prepper mindset somewhere in the back of my mind that says, even if everything goes wrong and the internet is destroyed tomorrow,
I
can
still have
watch my
this.
anime.
I can go to the mountains where there's where I barely have electricity.
Yep, I can pop that disc in.
Now that's different though.
I think that's something that you and I believe, but a 14-year-old today does not, and I think they're going to eventually take over, and they're not going to care. I think that it's something that makes sense for a lot of people, but ultimately we're going to be the increasing minority.
Now there's another possibility, as we see images that can be made from DVDs can contain the entire DVD, the menu structure, and things like that. Do you see any future for a single file that has within it the potential for using a menu structure?
Maybe. I think it's hard to say. I mean, that's one of those things where there could be any number of things, and it would be interesting to delve into some of those options, but that's going to require a lot of technical things. Part of the difficulty too is that it's getting media companies to sign on with these technologies when they're barely willing to handle streaming. We've talked about
the cost curve for moving into the technology alone is tricky. So, but with the merging of video games and media, sometimes it's hard to see now where one game is a movie or not a movie, whether it's a visual novel or not a visual novel, whether it's an anime or one's inspired the other. The anime's inspired the game, or the game's inspired the anime, or a live action, and you see a blurring of all these different areas. What's your take on that side of things?
I think I think we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that convergence with Steam. We were talking to Confident Gamers the other day, and they said most of the games they bought over the past couple of years are all on Steam or Xbox One. Wow. They don't actually own physical copies. They're just sitting there in their cloud. When they want to play it, it downloads to their console or their system. They play it, and then it just kind of handles whatever files it needs, and then it kind of disappears when they run out of space.
That's fantastic for a person living in a small location. You don't have to worry about when you move, you lost your only copy. You have your digital online presence. As long as you don't lose that, you're set, and you don't have to store it. You don't have to preserve it or keep it from damage. There are definitely benefits with a completely online library, so to speak, of content.
Now, in the chat room, we have a note from D. Roberts that hard copies also have stuff like posters and stuff with them, and collectors of box set stuff. What happens to those? Personally, I think you're going to have to go out and buy those separately. Yeah,
we saw the evolution going back to albums, where vinyl albums, records had all sorts of wonderful artwork that you could frame practically. They included posters sometimes, and stickers, and fold-outs, and they called them gatefolds, when you'd open up an album and look through, and there's booklets and things like that. As the transition went to cassettes and CDs, all those little extra gifts disappeared. You still paid about the same for the music, but the artists who were doing the visual portion of it got pretty much cut out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then we saw stuff, okay, you can go to the website and maybe get some things, but it wasn't the same, and you'd have to pay for it.
You guys think about the difference between a vinyl record, right, and a cassette tape. So think about how much
you can't fold the poster small enough to stuff it in and have a cassette.
And think about how much that changed the need for an artist.
Yeah.
You needed to be able to make this big impression, and suddenly now it didn't matter that much.
Yeah, we don't need a graphic artist. They're not going to be able to put a poster in there anyway.
Right. So I think that's going to be interesting. Now, Death Cannon in the chat room asks, do you think one day anime will be able to use its Japanese license in the States and not have to deal with a middleman?
I would like to see something like that. I'm not sure how that will work out, because international trade is kind of tricky, because international law is very different from relationship to relationship between country and country. So you get very different distribution systems in Europe, in South America, in the US. And so trying to balance that with the content that's allowed to be played, languages that need to be included, the remastering, and who the companies are that are doing that kind of fractionalizes it. It would be nice to have sort of a Rosetta Stone where, and if Japan was really inspired, they could become that centralized location, store it all, farm out those contracts, and then give international access to it.
And we saw that with Gundam Unicorn. That's exactly what they did with that project, where they hired companies in different countries to produce localized versions of it. But then those all went back to Japan, and they mastered one Blu-ray, which contained all of the dubs and subs on the one big Blu-ray, and then that got sold internationally.
And that's what they're going to dig up in 10,000 years and say, oh, now we know all these languages from ancient cultures. What is this?
Robots, apparently.
Giant robots, they had this word called lamo. And they'll misinterpret it like we misinterpret all sorts of hieroglyphics.
Probably religious significance. So very much to your point, I think one of the things is that the Japanese company can absolutely publish their thing internationally. Like, they don't need technically to go through a middleman. Here's the problem: they need somebody to distribute it in America, right? Like it needs to get to America and then get on those trucks to go everywhere.
There's so many different parts of this puzzle. So the licensing, the printing or distribution, and the distribution channel.
Yeah.
Virtual internet, would that alleviate some of that?
And that's kind of where we're going, is this whole idea that there could be some service that they set up, kind of like Steam or Xbox, where it just gets uploaded to those servers, and as long as they handle all of those things. Now, the other side of that issue, though, is on the one hand, so it's the classic centralization versus decentralization, right? With decentralization, you have all these companies and all these different countries handling all these different versions of it, which creates all the problems we have. But centralization means that one single point of failure.
Yes.
So, you have a Japanese company producing a French dub or an English dub.
The potential for problems, exactly.
Yeah.
And that also leans back to the idea of supporting an economy in a country. If you farm out some of that to a country, there are people whose jobs depend on it. So they're going to make sure that it gets good press, that it gets promoted, that there's going to be some effort and momentum behind it, besides the Japanese conglomerate that owns it just pushing.
And here's the main problem, is that as folks found in the 50s and 60s, when globalization, internationalization really became a big thing for like Japan versus the US, the reality is a Japanese company is not necessarily good at selling something in America. Just like an American company goes to Japan and tries to sell something there, they have no idea.
There's so much that goes into the cultural consciousness of marketing in a region.
You need to start with relationships. You need to know who to talk to, how to talk to them, it's a huge mess. So that's the problem with it, is that while the Japanese companies could do that, is very much an open question whether that's the most effective way of doing it. It's really hard to say.
Got a question here in the chat room. Can anyone find Gundam Unicorn Blu-rays?
That's a
Are they
good
still
question.
around?
There were some in the dealer's room.
Oh, were there?
Yeah. So I have seen them around. Now, there were just one or two of them, scattered, so I don't know about getting every single one.
Something I noticed this time around is a lot of titles that I've seen before released with different packaging, and maybe that's back into the relicensing or collections, save editions. But these were different spines that I saw that were in green, that were collections that are reissues, which makes me wonder about the future of anime, since those are anime past. we're looking towards the future, and we see CG, computer graphic design becoming more prevalent. The technology is getting better, faster. The ability. When will we see something that's immersive, like the Oculus in an anime environment, or virtual reality anime release?
I think a long time from now.
Is it that much of a change in the narratives?
Well,
I mean, a whole new language has to be created for an environment where somebody can turn their head the opposite direction to where you want your camera.
And for the same reason that it took anime companies so long, relatively, to start using computers. It's an industry that is, for many reasons, slow to adopt change, which is expensive.
Now, with anime and video game crossover, is there potential there for that? Since the games have an immersive environment, even though it's not virtual or immersive, they have a map or an area, a geographic region where the character moves that could potentially exist outside of.
And we're certainly seeing a lot of these. There's this trend now towards the cheap CGI series, and I mean cheap more in an expensive sense, where they will take CG characters and just kind of place them on a background and just have voice actors talk and do kind of minimal movement of the characters just to get across the fact that these people are interacting. And like that's the entire show. And so they do these 5-minute short anime that way. So I think that is an indication that the industry is adopting that and kind of moving in that direction. It remains to be seen. The main problem they're having is that CGI doesn't look like anime. CGI, because anime was built for hand-drawn animation, so those stylistic
making the style leap is still going to be a long ways.
You know, all of that, just differences in how characters move. It just doesn't come across in CGI, but it's getting closer.
Well, now this brings back, this ties in two different things. Death Cannon's mention of the holograms, which also ties in what we saw in the dealer's room today that we were looking at.
The Canopolis.
Exactly. So can you describe that endeavor in a little bit more depth than I could?
So for those unfamiliar with Hatsune Miku, this is a virtuoid idol, or a Vocaloid idol, rather. I keep saying virtuoid idol because that was the term in Macross Plus. I first came across it 20 years ago, so that's like a burn in my brain. So the idea is that you have one of these singing programs where you compose a song, and then it just takes all of those notes and maps a pre-recorded voice onto that, and it changes its pitch for each of those notes. Very straightforward.
Vocaloids.
Yeah, and Japanese is a perfect language for this because it has relatively few syllables and relatively few vowel and consonant sounds. So somebody doesn't have to record all the ch sounds. And the company had major problems with this until they decided to create a specific character around that, Hatsune Miku. And there's some really interesting analysis about this online about whether is it better to have a virtual pop star than a real one? The PBS Idea channel talked about that.
Virtual.
Because there's all sorts of elements of, pop idols can do all sorts of things, and they can disappoint people.
They can age. Oh no!
They can die.
Age.
They
can embarrass themselves. They can do
exactly. So Hatsune Miku doesn't have any of those problems because she exists virtually and she is whatever people want her to be.
Yes.
In every sense of that, by the way, Rule 34. So
wow.
So a couple of years ago, they said we want to do a Hatsune Miku concert.
Well, how do you have a virtual singer do a live concert
with a hologram?
Holograms.
So just like they did those sort of resurrection holograms with various celebrities a while ago, they said Hatsune Miku is a virtual character. So we will render her in CGI and create an entire concert of her and other Vocaloids in there as well, and have them all dance for a crowd for 2 hours.
Wow.
And it's amazing. If you've seen the concert footage out there, it's fabulous. Yeah, just like Macross Plus. And that creates the ability to have these characters that kind of that exists in this weird space, right, where it is a fan creation, kind of, but then it's not, and it's much more malleable.
Wow.
Than things out there.
I see that as having the potential to move in the direction of a virtual environment, combining anime style characters using CG in an immersive, potentially 3D environment.
Possible.
But it again, it seems like it will take a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
And also the viewing for viewers.
And it also remains to be seen whether those kinds of immersive environments make for effective entertainment experiences. That is going to be, as we've said, just like the movies didn't destroy the book. You know, people still read books after movies came out, and the movies didn't, and television didn't kill movies. Similarly,
and radio, and books.
Well, radio is probably not the best, unfortunately. Although we're seeing research into that. Anyway,
and vinyl. Everything old is new again. Come on, everybody, get out your scrolls.
Yeah. Totally.
Wait, we do.
Wait. There's someone out there doing it. So yes. So it very much remains to be seen if that's even a direction that the medium is going to go into. Because it may be that is, you can tell interesting stories with that, but not the same kind of stories. And folks want that linearity, they want that direction of saying, you are showing me this thing and that's all I'm focusing on. It's tough to say. And then you get folks like Makoto Shinkai, who does these sort of CGI, kind of like what I was talking about before, where you can kind of take CGI characters and CGI backgrounds and such, kind of merge them in interesting ways, sort of flatten them, would be one way of doing it. But yeah, it's hard to say where we're going to go with all of this stuff in the future. And I mean, who can say?
I've been looking for that garden of words.
Garden of words, yes.
Oh, got it.
We'll have to find it at some point. So it could well be that physical copies of media like this are a historical accident, in a sense. That these physical copies existed because that was how we had to get them at the time. But with something like the internet, it may make that more or less obsolete. Kind of, actually, vinyl is a good example of that, where there are people who want vinyl, and so they will press X copies of vinyl for those people, but that's the vast minority compared to everyone else who gets it on iTunes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, with the ability to distribute in a digital format, who is it? Somebody in the chat room mentioned digital distribution as a way of avoiding piracy or bad fan subs coming out and generating revenue. The potential for faster distribution without having to go through the chain of having somebody approve this artwork, approve this cover, approve this design. There's the story. The story already exists. We just need to swap in voices, text, and boom, there we go. We can hit the market real quick. Yeah,
that would be great. Again, assuming that you can do a good dub, a good sub.
That's the thing, is
well, and also it's gotten more complex by the fact that there are now fan subbers who think they can do better than everyone else. So there's a lot of fan subbers who say that translation isn't good. I'm going to do my own translation anyway.
And in some cases, they may have some turns of phrase that are better.
Sure,
but not always. And whether they're paid to do it or full time, and how much commitment they can give to a project is a different thing. But again, we've seen fan subbers who end up joining the industry because they've found a niche where they can go in and help out.
Yeah, and to be clear, you know, I raise that to point out the fact that a company produces an official version or produces a translation of something doesn't mean that piracy ends. You know, that stuff can still go out there and be around for its own reasons, which means that doing all of those, like releasing it, carries more things to think about than just we released it, good, all problems solved, right?
Yeah,
there's more
still going to be the piracy issue.
Yeah, there's going to be piracy issue, and just different folks approaching it from different perspectives.
I agree. Bring back vinyl. Put anime movies on vinyl.
Yeah. But yeah, in to his point, to your point, Liquidus, it's edition stuff, collector's edition stuff. There may be a market for that. It's interesting. So we'll see.
I like the idea of holographic resurrections. Do artists? I suppose this is a discussion for another time. But do artists have? Should artists have control over their image in perpetuity after they pass on? Yes. We have to open David Bowie's sarcophagus and wake the dead to ask him.
Yeah.
But the idea of a Beatles reunion, holographic, the potential for that kind of thing is fascinating.
Much less,
concept.
holographic actors. I'm surprised.
Catalog the entire actor's motions, movements, talk,
I'm
speech.
surprised no one has done this to a great degree yet. Of just saying we're going to make a new Humphrey Bogart movie.
Yeah. It just run his voice into a library catalog, like Naturally Speaking, Dragon.
CGI him up.
CGI him up, and you can do the multiple angles now and interpolate.
And obviously, it's extremely expensive to do that. But still, it's doable.
And the technology is getting, as Moore's law brings it along, and it makes it a little bit cheaper each time. And potential.
It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. So Zero ASD in the chat room says, I always thought dubbing was to help the anime do better with localization. But these days, anime is so popular, I think releasing it in Japanese and just slap sub on it would do the industry better. It's a possibility.
For some people, definitely, because they don't mind reading. However, sometimes I get lazy and I want to cook in the kitchen while I'm listening. I think the people who are on the cutting edge, who don't know Japanese but are into it enough, would definitely benefit.
And on the other hand, I've always been the one to defend dubs, because the issue with that is that I don't want to glance down every 5 seconds.
I find it sometimes distracting from the artwork and the emotion of the motion and emotion that's being portrayed.
The issue I have with that is that anime is usually a very rapid fire, but is often a rapid fire medium where there's a lot of stuff being thrown at you. It is surprisingly subtle. Garden of Words and Makoto Shinkai's works are a good example of that, where they will cut to a shot of a certain corner of the room and something laying on a desk for half a second.
You blink, you missed it.
You blink, you missed it, and there may be dialogue running, and you may not realize the significance of that, where the creator intended for you to notice that.
How many times have I rewound to see, or rewound, to see again, what is that I just saw?
Yeah.
What's the significance?
Right.
Quite often, fan subs will include text, translate the text but sometimes even official subs do that. And sometimes they will actually go in and put English letters in place of what's there. So depending upon the creative license that is given to the people working on it.
And of course, anime is increasingly globalized.
It's almost becoming more modular as the Japanese realize the potential markets overseas.
Yeah, and it's always been globalized to a larger degree than most things, because you get that you get a lot more signs in English. You get a lot more stuff that's easily swappable. That is the way of things. Well, Zero, that's the thing. The Zero in the chat room says, if you listen to anime long enough, you kind of intuitively understand the dialogue without glancing too often.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
I'm going to disagree with that.
You can get a feel for the emotion, though.
Well,
but
no,
not always.
I'm going to disagree
not
with
always.
That, because I've learned enough Japanese, and I've talked to enough people who learned enough Japanese beyond sort of the conversational Japanese to say Japanese emotion is not that easy to understand. What sounds like a certain emotion to us is often a very different sense in Japanese.
Yes.
And similarly, the patterns in the dialogue are very different. The other complexity too is that the words that we think we're recognizing, we don't. there are more senses to those words than we think there are.
Yeah, that's something that is even in English, one word contains several meanings. So the interpretation and how it's said, the inflection, so many variables. It almost wants watching in multiple modes.
Well, it gets down to the point that these things were made in Japanese. To really understand it, you need to have you need to be fluent in Japanese. That's that's the ultimate, if you will. You're always going to lose something for being outside of the original language.
And that would be my argument for going with an official release, because the subber is working with the people who are creators behind it. So if they have a question about the creator's intent, they can go and ask them or pick the brain of the publisher or somebody. Where if it's a fan sub, they may not have the access to those people to ask them what the intent is. So you're going off of the good faith that they know exactly what they're doing, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And it gets complicated even further by the fact that sometimes the Japanese, here's a complexity. The Japanese licensor doesn't always spell things right in their own version.
Intentionally. Or unintentionally. Yeah.
They have a great example of this is in Macross Frontier. So the enemies in Macross Frontier are these aliens called the Vajra. And as you know from having experience with the Japanese, the V sounds like B a lot of the times, and it can go either way. So for the internationalization of that, when it's spelled out in English officially, it's, I think, Bajura, Bajura. Here's the problem. The director of Macross Frontier is huge into Hindu philosophy and all that kind of stuff. Those are reference to the Vajra from, and that whole thing. So it is Vajra in English. We have a well-known English word for that, but the Japanese studio says it should be spelled this way because that's easier for everyone in the world to pronounce. Right? They want that word to be easier, where Vajra is just harder to go everywhere. So they standardize it, but that standardization doesn't work for English as well. But then
there's a lot of interplay in all those decisions. Wow.
So yeah, that's the thing. And the other problem here is our brains are really good at telling us that we're better at something than we think we actually are. And I know as somebody who has absolutely fallen prey to this. I think I know what's going on, but then somebody comes back and says, "Actually, no, you didn't."
There's this.
Yeah. And there can be so much in there that your brain has told you didn't miss, but you did. That's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, you don't know.
Yeah.
Is the fundamental problem. So, which is why I say I'd rather have a dub, because the dub is trying to make that, the dub tends to try to make that more understandable for the American audience in a way that is clearer to the ear, as opposed to everything else. But I've been ranting for quite a while on that. So
I saw some amusing things about Oculus and that world, and playing Dragon Ball on Oculus Z. Dragon Ball. Oh my! The ideas. It should be interesting to see how things turn out in the next few years.
Sure.
It is an expensive item that's being released soon.
Yep.
So $600 for that Oculus. However, that's just the hardware for viewing, not for playing it. So it needs a PC to that can run it, and it needs multiple USB ports.
4 USB ports.
4 USB ports. So the package deal might be a better concept if anybody was thinking about that out there.
And to be clear, we're obviously using Oculus Rift in the slightly broader sense of kind of VR technology. Obviously,
there's other
the one, but that is kind of the forerunner right now. in the sense of that, you know, going along. Well, again, Zero, you're falling prey to it again. He says the only problem I have with the dub is sometimes the voice actors sound really stiff or can't convey the original feeling of the dialogue. How do you know what the original feeling of the dialogue is? You think you know, but and again, I don't know either. I don't know enough Japanese to be able to say. My brain tells me I know because it has all these patterns about how voices go.
But if you listen to a lot of Japanese for a long time, you get to be familiar with what emotion is tied with the Japanese way of portraying it, which you can. So that stern sound doesn't always necessarily mean anger. Or, you know.
We had this, I was experiencing this the other day where there was a character in a show that was very even-keeled, and I realized she was pissed.
I've had girlfriends who've done that.
Exactly. And again, there was nothing in the anime and nothing in the tone of voice that was strained. There was
What's the matter?
That way.
Nothing. Uh-oh. We're in trouble.
A good example. Over here, when we hear that, we hear the strain in that voice. In Japanese, it's a different tone. Because there's
the nonverbal portion of verbal communication.
And there's a long tradition of this idea of restraint, this idea that you don't let these things show.
Yeah.
So it doesn't show that there is no audible.
But there's something sign. Communicated nonetheless.
The fact that it is calm or whatever says something.
Yeah.
So again, different culture is very difficult.
Showing restraint something that would ordinarily have a lot of more emotion. Okay, something's going on.
Exactly. And then all the complexities of language and gendered words and non-gendered words. It's really tough. You're talking about a language that has no word for sibling.
Wow.
Or brother or sister.
Wow.
None of those words exist in Japanese. So yeah, trying to understand.
There's a whole world of.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Desert. The Desert Fox in the chat room says, right or wrong, we attach an emotion or feeling to a voice. Certainly true. It's weird to have the dub change that perception of a character or voice. Well, but how do you know that it's changing it correctly or incorrectly? Right? That's the issue. Is that yes, the perception has changed, but we can't tell if our brains are sending us the correct signals or not. The only way you can know that is by learning Japanese, and not just conversational Japanese, but a lot of Japanese. And again, I'm not saying subs are bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch subs. I'm saying that there are problems with assuming that our understanding of subs is accurate all the time. There's a lot more going on there than our brains want us to believe, because our brains want us to make things easy. It wants to sort of see patterns. So again, yes, it's one of those. It's a trade-off.
Here's another thing. If you listen to the Japanese and you read the English sub, and then have the English sub on while you listen to the English dub, completely different things sometimes. Sure. So you get a different story, different language. The text written for the sub. Different than what the voice actors are saying, which is different from what the Japanese was.
And one of the complexities of that is often, and this is what folks don't know a lot, is that the English sub, as from what I've been told, the first translation, which is what you see in those subs, is we call it a straight translation or direct translation, which means simply somebody listened to the dialogue and then typed up an English translation of that. That gets then handed over to an ER person.
Clean it up.
who cleans it up for the dialogue, but they're the ones who often go back and say, okay, what was the original intent? They're the ones going back and saying, is this a joke? Is this not meant as a joke? Is there a reference here to something else going on in the show? The sub isn't necessarily paying attention to the show in general. They're paying attention to just the words as a simple translation, I think is a better way of putting it. So sometimes the dub is actually, in that sense, more accurate because they're going back to what the original folks were trying to get across. Good example of that, where things get more complex, is Bacano, where you have these characters, these Italian mobsters in New York, the intent in that show was for them to be Italian. That's what they are. But they're not going to try to affect an Italian accent in Japanese. It's not going to sound right.
Italian Japanese.
So they don't talk like they're from New York. What's going on? So when they did the dub in English, they added that because that was the intent of the authors and the creators. It's not in the Japanese version because of the voice acting is a different thing. So again, and you can go back and forth as to what you prefer, what makes more sense. It can be harder to understand that Italian accent. So it's complicated. It's really complicated. Yeah, exactly as you said, Liquidus, is that we can tell when an English actor sounds good, but how do we tell a Japanese actor sounds good when we're not that familiar with the language? We know some of it, but we don't necessarily know it to that level.
Adding on to that, a simple translation for a small segment may not convey the entire intent that is throughout a story, throughout a season, or the entire arc. So there's subtleties, implications. Certain things are lost in translation just because we don't have equal access words, and different baggage are associated with each of those words, and trying to map everything over is kind of tricky.
Yeah,
so it's interesting in that respect to see other people's interpretations. So from that side, I am a fan of fan subs. So just seeing a new perspective.
Sure. And the other side of that coin is, we all watch dubs. We all have access to dubs and official translated subs and fan subs. They're all part of the world. Those are all things that we have access to. That's totally cool. And the only reason I ran about this is that folks say, only watch this or only
that.
This.
Only that. No. Watch everything. Yeah, if you can.
There are going to be pluses on one and minuses on others in different contexts. It depends. Anyway,
wow. So let's see. How are we doing on?
We are.
We blew up the timer. Wow!
Absolutely.
This has been a lot of fun. So we were here live at Animore. Are we going to try this again?
We're going to try to do this again tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Can't promise when because of the schedule. There's some stuff I think that we saw around this time that we may have to do. But we are going to try to do it again around this time on Saturday. And we will bring you more about this con, and we will talk about more. One of the great things about you guys out there in the chat room is that we can come on and you guys give us plenty of stuff to talk about and think about.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, we can ask Vic.
Hey,
Send us your questions. We'll try and work them in.
So to that point, we should bring this up for those who may have been noticing Animore. Vic Mignogna is one of the guests. We are going to try to get him on camera, but he actually is having some sore throat issues this weekend. So
very important for a voice actor to not talk when they're having bad throat issues.
Exactly. So we're going to try to at least meet up with him, but it's unlikely we're going to meet up with him at this convention, but fortunately we're going to be at the same convention as him in 2 weeks. So we're hoping that if we can't get him on camera this week, we'll get him on camera in 2 weeks once he's rested up a little bit.
Yes.
That is the plan. And you're right, Fisher, you have words in Japanese mean the same. There are many words for hello in Japanese in many situations, so it is complicated. Thank you very much for joining us, Dee. It was great having you in the chat room. You're a great asset.
Yeah.
And I hope you come back. Absolutely. So, and you're right, Dee. Vitsuria Kugumiya Itsundere. That's just what it always is. That's just what Rie does all the time, pretty much. So yeah, again, thank you all very much. This has been fantastic, and we'll try to be back again tomorrow with more. We'll see you then.
Sayonara.
What? I said I'd show you guys the grab bag. Let's
the grab bag, yeah.
The grab bag over. Where's the grab bag?
The grab bag is the boxes.
Boxes over there.
You want me to grab it?
If you could.
I can grab the grab bag.
It's right over there. Yeah, it's
okay.
Right next to the thing. We will grab the grab bag and show you guys what's in the grab bag.
Let's see.
It's right there. Right behind that. In the bag. There it is.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
It's a bag that you've got in the grab bag.
So the grab bag came with a bag. You guys recognize can see who this is before I tell you who it is. Give you a few seconds there. That
is it focusing on it?
Pretty decently. It's. I mean, I'd have to get close up.
Extreme close up.
Unnecessary zoom. Unnecessary zoom. That is Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin, which was a wonderful discovery.
Cool.
Because a lot of times, oh yeah, that character from that show that I haven't seen. But I know who that is. That's cool. And then along with it came, let's see here,
a bag in the grab bag.
Stuff.
That is cool.
So I got, interestingly, an issue of Justice League America, just kind of unusual, called Buried Alive.
That sounds creepy.
The September 11th, 2007 issue.
Wow. You never know what you're going to get in a grab bag.
Exactly. And it's a very interesting way. So these characters are literally buried. I'm wondering now.
Tales from the script.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So they had some kind of, there's some kind of thing going on, but very odd.
Mad Magazine
style. Yeah, kind of a Mad Magazine insert in there, which is neat. It's kind of unusual. But then getting into some of the more anime stuff. So I got a copy of Zero Woman Final Mission about, quote, the sexiest special agent from Section 0 is strapping on her thigh holster for one final assignment. A mysterious hit-and-run accident is covered up by corrupt police officers. So this is Japanese.
Is that live action?
It's live action.
Oh my.
Starring Naoko Ijima, Wataru Takasugi, Misayo Haruki, Hidetoshi Okamoto, and others. The rating on this is NR.
Not rated.
No, it's not rated.
Oh,
yeah. So that's Zero Woman. And then
wow.
I did get some anime, fortunately. Volume 1 of Nanaka 16, which is a quasi-magical girl series about a 17-year-old girl who has the mental capacity of a kindergartner. So that's always fun. So she basically hits her head and starts to act like she's 6 years old. But she has this transforming magical girl thing. I don't know quite what's going on there, but that looks fun.
Wow.
And then I got 2 manga.
Cool.
I got...
And there's extras on it?
Yeah. Extras, yeah. Volume 10 of One Piece in a very nice, shiny sort of gold foil volume, which is pretty cool. And then Volume 6 of Boys B, which is sort of a shoujo-y... it's a romance series, guy and girl having romance.
So grab bags are pretty cool. You get all sorts of stuff in there.
And
what? Cards?
Magic the Gathering cards. So booster pack of Magic with some, random stuff in there. Nothing too crazy. A rare, some uncommons, and a bunch of commons. But can't complain about that.
Oh my! Squish.
Yeah. Standard stuff for a romance series. So this was, I think, a $35 grab bag. Can't complain about that at all.
Yeah.
It's a good haul. We had $10 and $35 grab bags. So if you're at a con, that's a fun way of...
Mix it up. Hey, everybody, let's grab a grab bag.
Stuff. And then, those could be gifts.
And gifts, and if you didn't know about something, you learn about something new. And
yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you all very much. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Ta-da.